It's time to play. Is this a thing or not a thing? In the wake of the Timberwolves blowout loss to the Magic, we'll talk role players, we'll talk the Wolves against good defenses, and more next.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game. Happy Monday, everybody. My name is Ben Beacon. I'm the host of the daily Locked On Wolves podcast. On today's show, we're going to talk a little bit about the Wolves blowout loss to the Magic Saturday, but not so much a post-game pod. It was 2 days ago. We don't need to belabor the, horrific outing from Saturday. But what I do want to do in the wake of that game, and I would say encouraged by, I am not encouraged by that game, but inspired by that game, I guess I could say, is I want to play, is this a thing or is it not a thing? Okay, I want to go through a list of things that seem like they're things, but are they? Okay, so for example, we'll start with like afternoon games. Are the Wolves really bad at afternoon games? We'll talk about that a little bit. We'll talk about the Wolves against good defenses, because coming out of that game, I was like, all right, well, really good defense. I think the Wolves, sometimes that's where the offense struggles. So we'll talk about some of that. We'll talk about some of the role players. Obviously, a lot of guys that did not play well. Basically, if your name wasn't Anthony Edwards, you didn't play all that well on Saturday. So we'll dig in on some of that stuff too. We'll talk a little Western Conference in light of what happened over the weekend across the conference. The Wolves are still, they've lucked out in terms of the performance of the teams that are around and right beneath them really in the West. So we'll get to all that here today. A big thank you off the top for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. All right. Of course, I should say the Wolves don't play again until tomorrow night. It's an extremely late game. They're at LA. It's a Lakers game on Peacock. So that means it is a 10 p.m. Central tip, which is just insane. It's Peacock, and I think it's also NBC. So it's a Tuesday night on NBC game, which I think means what's the late game. So it's probably not Tarico. Anyway, at the latest tip that I can remember, I don't know that the Wolves have ever had a tip scheduled for later than 9:30 p.m., which means it'll really tip at like 10:10 Central, which is just insane. Anyway, that's Tuesday night. So we'll preview the Wolves-Lakers matchup on Tuesday. We have not seen LA, the Lakers, I should say, since the opening week in the first 10 days of the season. Remember, the Wolves lost twice to the Lakers in their first 5 games and have not seen LA since then. And, of course, a lot has changed there, not necessarily roster-wise, but it's been a roller coaster, as it always is for the Lakers. So we'll talk about that on tomorrow's show, though. Today, I want to get into the is this a thing or not a thing? So coming out of Saturday, the big one for me was I was like, look, the way the Wolves performed, they scored 92 points against the Magic. So, obviously the offense wasn't great. Now, they also gave up 119 points to the Magic, which, is not a good offensive team. So the way the game played out how you might expect. The Magic are a bad offensive team and a good defensive team. So if the Wolves are terrible on defense, obviously the Magic are a professional NBA team. Paolo Banchero plays well. You're going to give up some points. Desmond Bane played well, obviously was great. But the Wolves offense, how much of it was just missed shots versus lack of ball movement, an increase in isolation play, which when the Wolves aren't going well, that is an issue. And then also the Magic just being a really, really good defense. So I decided I would take a look at cleaning the glass. And one of the things you can do on cleaning the glass is filter results by opponent point differential rank, the top third of the league, the middle third of the bottom third. You could also do it by offense and by defense. So overall this season, the Magic, and this is through play on Saturday, Orlando they're actually currently the 12th best defense in the league. So they're not a top 10 defense. Now, it's gone up and down quite a bit. I would argue that grand scheme of things, they probably are what I would consider basically a top 10 defense. But the numbers say they're 21st in offense and 12th in defense through play on Saturday. Okay. So this doesn't exactly prove this point, but it kind of does. So what I did is I sorted by opponent defensive rank of top 10. How have the Timberwolves performed against the league's top 10 defenses, which again, Orlando falls just outside of? Minnesota has the league's best offense against top 10 defenses, which is insane. That completely floored me. Not only that, they're the best team in the league, differential-wise, against top 10 defenses. So if you want to factor in the defense, the Wolves are 10-6 against teams with top 10 defenses. They're number one in net rating at plus 5.1. They have the number one offense, 118.5 points per 100 possessions against top 10 defenses. It just completely shocked me when I saw that. Because what has the Wolves defense been this year? It's been anything if not volatile. Or excuse me, offense. The Wolves defense too. The Wolves offense has been completely volatile. So who are the league's top 10 defenses? Now, this stat is against like when they played them, right? So like, for instance, had the Wolves played the Magic a few weeks ago, say they were a top 10 defense, like that would hit this category here. So this isn't like this is, and then my stat I'm going to pull now is the top 10 defenses as of right now. So OKC, obviously, they played OKC okay this year. San Antonio, they played okay. Houston, they've only played once, and they played well against them, although they lost -8 Anthony Edwards. Miami, they played well against. Boston. Toronto, they've beaten twice for the first time in a long time. Minnesota is a top 10 defense. Phoenix, they have not played well. And the Knicks, who I believe they split against. So that stat absolutely surprised me because in my head, the Timberwolves offense struggles when teams can goad them into just playing isolation basketball. My turn, your turn offense. And how many times did we see this, especially the second half against the Magic on Saturday, the third quarter specifically, where Minnesota was like, all right, we're going to go Ant ISO or Randle ISO. He's going to drive and get stuck, kick it out to Ant, who's going to go ISO, and he'll drive and get stuck, and then throw the hot potato to somebody else, right? Like that's how much of the Wolves offense has been that. And certain teams can goad Minnesota into doing that, or goad them into trying to throw difficult skip passes against the zone or whatever the case might be. Good defenses, it seems like, anecdotally, it seems like they've been able to do that to the Timberwolves this year. But the numbers suggest that the numbers say that Minnesota's been good against good defenses. Absolutely shocked me. Now, there can be loud exceptions to the rule that stand out in our heads, and that's clearly what's clouded me. With my anecdotal judgment that they've been bad against good defenses, but it also only underscores the point that the Timberwolves shoot themselves in the foot so often. And that's not breaking news, but it underscores that point that the Wolves are actually good against the good defenses. And they're actually not bad against the bad defenses either, which is good, but they're bad against the middle defenses, which is not surprising. They're 19th in offense against the middle third of the league in defense. It's just maddening because the Wolves are their own worst enemy. And I know it sounds like a classic, like the opponent's not good. We lost because of ourselves. We gave this to them, that sort of a thing. But that is the case. The Wolves, pound for pound, have certainly one of the best starting lineups, one of the best rotations in the league. They've got a top 6 player in Anthony Edwards, top 7 player, whatever, in Anthony Edwards. But against the middle third of the league, which would include Orlando, it would include Golden State, it would include Atlanta, who blew out the Wolves on New Year's Eve. It would include Philadelphia, who gave the Wolves trouble, Portland, who's given the Wolves some trouble, the Clippers, the Lakers, who the Wolves have lost twice to. It's that tier of defenses that the Wolves have struggled the most against. And again, they're their own worst enemy. I want to talk next about a couple things that are or are not a thing. I'm going to hit a couple of these quicker than that last one, and then we'll close by talking Western Conference standings. It's all coming next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at Quo. Spring is a natural reset point, and if there's one thing that can quietly cost business money, it's messy communication. Missed calls, scattered texts, no clear thread of who said what. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Quo, the smarter way to run your business communications. Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2 with over 3,000 reviews, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses. It lets your entire team share one business number so you never miss a call, text, or opportunity. The part that I love is everything lives in one clean thread. Again, calls, texts, voicemails, the whole team will see the conversation so nothing falls through the cracks, and the AI summaries save serious time by logging calls and highlighting the next steps automatically. It just makes your business feel more organized and responsive. Make this the season no opportunity and no customer slips away. Try Quo free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedonnba. That's QUO.com/lockedonnba. Quo. No missed calls, no missed customers. Today's episode is also brought to us by our friends at PrizePicks. Shoot your shot on PrizePicks and get $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. That's right. PrizePicks is now giving you $50 in lineups when you sign up and play your first $5 lineup, and it makes every dunk, every assist, and every big play that much more exciting. PrizePicks is the #1 daily fantasy sports picks app, and it is super simple to play. What I love about using PrizePicks is you just pick more or less. It's super easy. You just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If your picks are right, you could cash in. You could also build your lineups across sports. So you could hit, like, obviously big basketball tournament upcoming. You could hit college basketball plus pro basketball. You could hit baseball, where spring training and World Baseball Classic now, but like you could combine baseball. There's hockey ongoing. So maybe like college hoops and hockey and NBA, you can combine it all together. One feature that I also like is early payouts. If a player gets off to a hot start, you might get the option. You can cash out your winnings before the game even finishes. It's a really fun way to test your sports knowledge and stay locked into the action. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. If you've been thinking about joining the Everydayer Club, now is the time. Again, you get ad-free shows and access to our group chat on Discord, which has been hopping ever since the trade deadline. It's been very active. If you're signed up before the NCAA tournament tips off, which is just a week from now, a little over a week, you can get into our Everydayer Club bracket pool on Discord for a chance to win Locked On merch. That's right. You could join our bracket pool on Discord, and you get a chance to win some Locked On merch, which is always awesome. Should be a lot of fun. Right now, you can use the code MARCH to get your first month free. Head to lockedonwolves.supercast.com and type the code MARCH in, or you could just tap the link in the show notes to learn more and get signed up. All right. A few more things that are either a thing or are not a thing. Afternoon games. It's definitely been a thing. Although, transparently, I can't find like a good way to like filter by afternoon games versus day games to find out how bad the Wolves have or have not actually been in afternoon games. But I'm like, I mean, the New Year's Eve day game, the matinee was a disaster. There was a Knicks Sunday afternoon game. There was I guess last Sunday, the Wolves beat the Nuggets in an afternoon game. There was another Saturday matinee that was very bad. There was I'm trying to remember if it was one of the Cleveland games. I think it was Cleveland afternoon game. They get up 146 points. So this is my best estimate. I think the Wolves are like 2-4 in afternoon games with some blowout losses. Like, it's bad. And it's not an excuse. I think it goes back to a little bit what I was saying in the first segment. It's almost like the conditions have to be perfect for the Timberwolves to be good, which is a problem. I also realize I'm talking about a team that has 40 wins now with 18 games left. So, all that to say, like, I think it's easy to nitpick, but that is kind of, I think, a kind of an overarching theme of the season is conditions have to be perfect, or maybe said another way, maybe it's the inverse of that. If conditions are perfectly bad, the Wolves aren't going to win, right? Good team missing a good player, they're going to lose to that team, right? A bad team that has all their, like, they lost to the New Orleans team with Zion a month ago, right before the All-Star break. The Clippers, I think right after they traded James Harden, but they had Kawhi. The Wolves got blown out by the Clippers. Oh, that was another Sunday afternoon game. So that's another factor, right? Afternoon game, bad team with their stars, good team missing their stars. Like, all these things are just like, oh, okay, red flag for the Timberwolves. Now, of course, they still win some of those games, which is how they're 40-24. And I guess that's the other piece is like, you're not the Thunder, you're not the Pistons, although the Pistons would not lost 4 straight. So what's that next tier of teams? Obviously there's going to be things that don't go right and you just lose sometimes, but it's so predictable with this Timberwolves team. And I think that's what's so maddening is just you can just predict what's going to happen based on each of those conditions. And I would certainly put matinee games in that category. Something that is very clearly a thing, Julius Randle's issues. Now, again, not breaking news here, but since the All-Star break, which is 8 games, it is bad. And the Wolves are 6-2 over those 8 games. But Julius Randle's averaging 14.5 points per game on under 40% shooting from the field. He's 48% on twos, 16% on threes. Since the All-Star break, Julius Randle has made 4 3-pointers. He's 4 of 25 on threes since the All-Star break. He is averaging 14.5 points, just under 7 rebounds, and just over 4 assists per game. This Julius, because that's the other thing here, is obviously the scoring is down, but so's the assists. And this is per game average. It's not assist rate, but 4.3 assists per game over that stretch. And you want to take, like, this is a little arbitrary, but we'll take January 1st until the All-Star break. Assists were just under, he was about a half assist more per game over that stretch. And of course he was averaging over 22 points per game. The 3-point shooting still wasn't good, but he was 58% on twos instead of 49% on twos since. Like, no matter how you slice it, the passing and the shooting, the 3-point shooting went from below average to just atrocious, from 31% to 16% in that January, February pre-All-Star break sample to post-All-Star break. And then the 2-point shootings plummeted. The assists have mostly dried up. Since the All-Star break, he's had 3 games with more than 5 assists, which again is abnormal for Julius Randle. So the Julius Randle swoon is definitely a thing. Now, again, in the wake of Saturday's game against the Magic, I would say that the role player contributions from Jaden McDaniels and Donte DiVincenzo being an issue is not a thing. In other words, put another way, if we're going to call this like a first take segment or what is it? First things first or whatever the show is on the Fox channel. This is a good segment for that. Like, don't be worried. Don't panic about the Jaden McDaniels, Donte DiVincenzo piece. I mean, those guys combined for 0 field goals made on Saturday. As crazy that is. And it's not like as crazy as that is. They both played 29 minutes. They combined for 3 points on 0 of 15 shooting and 0 of 10 outside the arc. Jaden made 3 free throws. Neither one made a field goal. Again, 0 of 15 combined, 0 of 10 on threes. And they combined for 6 assists and 3 turnovers, DiVincenzo and Jaden McDaniels. Now, McDaniels obviously had the foul trouble recently. He's had consecutive games now in single-digit scoring, so obviously that's not great. But right before that, he had scored in double figures in 5 straight, including the 29 points in the win over Portland. Not the one before the All-Star break when Randle went for 41, but the one after the All-Star break that they only won by 3. That was the 5 3-pointer game for Jaden. Now, since then, since the 5 3-pointer game when he scored 29 points, which was a couple of weeks ago, Jaden McDaniels has only made 1 3-pointer. He's 1 for 12 since then, including 0 for 4 against Orlando on Saturday. But again, I'm not panicking about that. DiVincenzo, he had 0 points on Saturday. 2 games ago, he had 7 in the win over Memphis. Besides that, though, he'd been in double figures, 5 out of 6 games, including 16 or more points in 4 out of 6 games. So, and while he went 0 for 6 on threes, he was 4 for 6 the game before that. He was 5 for 10 a couple games before that. He had another 5 for 10 in that Portland game I mentioned that Jaden went off in. So, not a thing to worry about. As bad as Saturday was, the Wolves are built to withstand a little bit of that with the additions of Dosunmu and obviously, addition of Dosunmu and obviously still having Reid. But the problem was that nobody else came to the party. Ants had 34 points. Nobody else scored more than 14. And we saw a little bit of that in the win last week against, which win was it? Was it the Memphis win? It was the Memphis win when Ant went off and nobody else was good. I think Jaden had like 16 in that game. But it was the Ant show, which of course was the opposite of the game before that, the big win at Denver when it was a very balanced scoring night. Jaden had 20 and Ant was right around 20 points. I think he had 21 and led the team. It was balanced. And we're kind of vacillating back and forth this I think I would say oscillating makes more sense here. Oscillating back and forth between this, like it's only Ant and it's a balanced attack. And in this case, it was literally only Ant. And by that, I mean, nobody else scored more than 14 points in this game. Julius had 14, Nas had 13, Gobert had 12. I mean, I would assume it had 3 points. Dante had 0. Jaden had 3. In general, the Timberwolves are built to withstand a little bit of that because they have Dosunmu and Reid, who are 2 of the top 3 candidates for 6th man of the year this year, or would have been if they didn't end up on the same team. Plus, we know Jaden scored. We know Julius can score. It's been this kind of perfect storm, or very imperfect storm, I guess, here recently. All right, one more thing, not a thing, and then we'll head into a little bit of Western Conference talk, and that's how we'll close the show here today. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our title sponsors at FanDuel. College basketball is nonstop. Big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every single night. From early tip-offs to late-night West Coast shootouts, there's always action on the board. And now FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. You can build any college hoops parlay you want. You can pick rivalry games, ranked matchups, whatever you like the most. We're in a conference tournament week. Of course, the Gophers kind of finished their regular season with a bit of a whisper, but still encouraging signs in Nico Medved's first year at the helm for the Gophers. But Big Ten conference tournament, all the other conference tournaments this week, you can mix your spreads, totals, and player props if you want to match however you see the slate playing out, and then you can apply the profit boost and instantly bump up the potential payout. Go safe or go bold. Ride with the team you've been following all season. It's your parlay, your style, now with more upside behind it. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is also brought to us by our friends at Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one person you have to fill still sitting open. One position you have to fill still sitting open. When the pressure is on and you need the right hire, this is a job for Sponsored Jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for. Skills, experience, location, so you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the 1 minute that I'm talking to you about Indeed, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Spend less time searching. Again, more time actually interviewing candidates, less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the cast, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. Plus, listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. All right, one more thing or not a thing before we get into a little bit of Western Conference talk. Here's something that's definitely a thing. Kyle Anderson's importance. And I recognize that is not a great sign for a team that considers itself a contender because he was a buyout market guy. But he did not play Saturday, and what happened? The Timberwolves scored 92 points. They didn't move the ball, and I know they shot 22% on threes, and that's probably the primary issue. But how do you get open threes? Well, you move the ball. How do you overcome a cold shooting night? You move the ball, you get shots at the rim, you get shots in the paint, you get to the free throw line. Now, the Wolves got to the free throw line a fair amount. They actually shot the same number of free throws as Orlando. They didn't shoot any in the second quarter when they scored only 20 points. A lot of it was in the third quarter when they were trying to play catch up, and it was ultimately really too late. And early fourth quarter, they continue to struggle making free throws too. They also gave up too many paint points, which you could argue Kyle Anderson would have been important in the non-Gobert minutes to try and limit some of the paint opportunities for Orlando, who's, of course, a bad three-point shooting team, and themselves only shot 26% on threes, right? Or they were hot early, which obviously helped them build a lead by halftime, kind of late in the second quarter. But Orlando was 26% on threes. They made 9. Minnesota's 22% on threes. They made 9. Each team shot 31 free throws. This was a matter of not getting easy shots either in transition or in the half court, in part because of a lack of ball movement. And that's exactly what Kyle Anderson brings to the table as a connector, as a playmaker, as just another ball mover. And connector is a word that Chris Finch likes to use to describe, well, slow-mo, but others as well. And he does do that extremely well. And he, of course, did not play on Saturday. And that was a huge issue. And again, I recognize, if the Wolves' status as a contender, a true finals contender, is so tenuous that they're relying on a guy who's a buyout market guy, it's not great. But at the same time, when he's healthy, look at how deep this team does appear, right? I mean, they go a legit 8 deep if you include Reid, Dosunmu, Kyle Anderson, and I guess 9 if you want to include Bones Highland, who had another kind of topsy-turvy game on Saturday, which is, I guess, the right way to describe Bones overall. In terms of, I guess, his career arc would be very topsy-turvy. But the importance of Kyle Anderson can't be understated. I think that's very obvious. When he doesn't play on Saturday, the offense grinds to a halt after him, playing well in the 2 games, the Memphis and Toronto games last week. Minnesota played well offensively. 2 games that were maybe a little closer for comfort than they would have liked them to have been. But Kyle Anderson playing a significant role in those wins, and then doesn't play Saturday. And they score 92 points and shoot 22% from 3 and 36% overall from the floor. Not great. Okay. Let's talk about the Western Conference. As I record this on Sunday evening, Houston has already lost to the San Antonio Spurs, but as I record this, the Phoenix game is still going on. In fact, it's halftime of Phoenix and Charlotte, so we don't know what's going to happen there. Charlotte hit a bit of a rough patch late last week after, of course, being lights out here for the last several weeks. If Phoenix were to win this game, I guess it doesn't have any direct impact. Phoenix would still be like 2.5 back on Minnesota. So that, I guess, doesn't really impact where the Wolves are now. But that's the only outstanding game when it comes to Western Conference standings. San Antonio, though, beat Houston, which is good/bad. It's a good thing because it keeps Minnesota in the 3 spot, but now the Wolves are 7 back of the Spurs. So the 2 seeds basically not a possibility at this point. 7 back with 18 to play or whatever the Wolves have left. 18 to play. But they're a half game up on Houston. They played 1 more game than Houston. They're tied in the loss column, but they're 1 up in the win column, and they have a slightly worse differential than Houston. They still play the Rockets. How many more times do the Wolves play Houston? Twice more still, because they've only played once. They play Houston on March 25th. So 2.5 weeks from now, that's an ESPN game at home. And then they're at Houston on Prime, the second to last game of the season on a Friday night, which will be fascinating. So 2 important games upcoming, the all-important tiebreaker between the Wolves and the Rockets, because they've only played the one time. That was the game that Ant missed, and the Wolves they were winning in the third quarter and lost by 5 in mid-January. So that's going to be fascinating. Sitting here right now, Minnesota is 7 back of the Spurs for the 2 spot, so they're not going to get to 2. They're a half game up on Houston for the 3, and only 1 game up on the Lakers and Nuggets, who have identical records, 1 back in both the loss and the win column of the Wolves, which those 4 teams for a while have been kind of jockeying between 3 and 6, the Wolves, Rockets, Lakers, and Nuggets, and that appears to be the case. If the Suns were to lose, then they would be 3 back of Denver and the Lakers. So, it's not obviously, it's certainly possible they could get up to 6, but it's very unlikely. So you're really talking Wolves, Rockets, Lakers, Nuggets. Obviously, teams want to avoid the 4-5 because then you end up, if you win, you potentially play OKC in the second round. Now, the other school of thought there that I think makes some sense is maybe you play the Thunder when your team is still relatively fresh, right? You're going to get more tired the further you go in the playoffs. And what are the odds somebody else knocks off the Thunder? So if you're Minnesota and you end up in the 4, hopefully you play the Lakers or somebody that maybe you think you can beat in 5 games and you're not super beat up. And maybe the Thunder have a tough matchup, whoever comes out of the play, and maybe they end up playing a motivated, relatively healthy Clippers team or whatever the case might be. And then you get the Thunder before you're another round more beat up, because say you're in the 3 seed and in the second round, you got to play the Spurs. By the time you get to OKC, if you get past the Spurs, you get to OKC in the conference finals and you're exhausted because you just finished a 7-game series, right? That's that school of thought. I don't know. I haven't really decided where I land there yet. You obviously can't get too cute. You just got to get in. But the goal would be to be in the 3 or 4 spots that then you avoid. I think you'd avoid then, the 2 or the 3, I should say. Am I doing that right? the 1 and the 4 on opposite ends of the bracket. I don't know. I've confused myself now. Whatever I said first makes sense to me. That you want to avoid that matchup and be in the you want to be in the 2 spot or the 4 spot to avoid that matchup in the second round. But anyway, you don't want to get too cute. Just make the playoffs, get home court advantage, avoid the play-in at all costs. And the Wolves are in pretty good position to do that. Obviously, staying ahead of the Rockets is important. All right, that's all I got for you today. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll talk more lineups, and then we'll get you ready for Wolves-Lakers tomorrow night. Have not seen LA since October, believe it or not. So we'll talk about that matchup on tomorrow's show. Big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. A reminder that if you never miss an episode, the Everyday Club is built for you. Get Locked On Wolves ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to lockedonwolves.supercast.com to join the club. If you're watching on video, after this episode, we'll send you right over to the first ever 24/7 National NBA YouTube channel on audio. Make sure that you make your second listen NBA Game Night on Locked On NBA. Of course, Locked On Wolves is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beacon. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.